Can you tell in more detail what specific methods they used during this interrogation, or is it hard for you to talk about it and you don't want to remember?
The main tool they used was powerful electroshock weapons. I was severely beaten with electricity, but beaten very thoughtfully, purposefully on the most sensitive areas of the body, on the soles of the feet and the palms of the hands, where the most nerve endings are concentrated. I was first tortured for 2 hours, then returned to the cell, an hour later led out again for the second round, and toward evening the guard approached the bars again and stated, "Well, okay, Tom, get ready. Now you'll go for the third stage. We'll squeeze the whole soul out of you." And at that moment I had a severe psychological breakdown. I felt such total hopelessness and wild pain that I saw purely suicide as the only logical way out for myself, to end these torments. But thank God, the guys in the cell noticed my condition in time. We sat in the corner, started talking in a whisper. They shared their experience, supported me all night, and somehow this terrible crisis moment, thank God, passed.
Horrible. Every time I hear such testimonies from the guys, I don't tire of wondering how far human sadism and the absolute lack of empathy in these creatures can go. Purely logically, when they torture you, is it really impossible to tell them calmly, look, I am an ordinary soldier. I have been in captivity for 3 years. I physically cannot know any relevant information about the front. What is the point of beating me? Or do no logical reasons and arguments work on them at all?
No, logic doesn't work there at all. The standard answer to any arguments, you know everything, you are lying, you will tell everything, and then follows a solid, brutal profanity. I just don't want to repeat these words on air. They are not looking for information. They derive pleasure from the very process of mocking and breaking a person.
How about your food ration during this period?
The ration was calculated exclusively so that the body had minimal energy just to stand on its feet, execute their physical commands, and banally not die of hunger right in the cell. Mostly it was the so-called cabbage on water, a smelly, watery swill with a few pieces of rotten cabbage. True, there was one specific period when the food quality improved slightly. They started giving us porridge mixed with potatoes and zucchini. This coincided with the moment when prisoner exchange processes actively resumed. The colony administration even started weighing us once a month, so that we would look at least somewhat decent before the commissions. This minimum was enough to support life, but we were in a state of chronic, constant hunger. There was no strength at all. That is, it was enough for the guard to force us to manifest a little more physical activity, for example, when we were forced to squat all day. I remember a day when we collectively did over 5,000 squats upward from a deep squat during a shift. The occupiers called this exercise catching flies. After such torture, you return to the cell. You don't have the strength to take a breath. Your heart just jumps out of your chest. Calories from that cabbage were catastrophically lacking for such loads.
What turned out to be harder for you? This total, constant psychological pressure, humiliation with all these ninja turtles and poems, or direct, severe physical pain from blows and shockers?
These things worked in synergy there. They cannot be separated. By constant physical pain, blows, and torture, they brought our bodies to such a state of complete psychological depression and exhaustion that later you perceived any moral humiliation, senseless commands, or camp gimmicks much more easily on autopilot. We talked quietly among ourselves in the cell. Guys, we don't have another way out right now. We are obliged to implicitly execute all this idiocy just to save life, because otherwise we will just be beaten to death here. Physical reprisal always invisibly loomed over you 24/7. You were in a state of constant animal fear, and this state completely burned out the nervous system.
Listen, if during an ordinary interrogation they tried to squeeze the soul out of you with shockers, beating on the soles and palms, then what happened in that camp basement they constantly scared you with? What could be even harsher than this?
The guys who went through the basement told me terrible things. First, the basement room was constantly flooded up to the ankles with cold water, and people were kept there for days without the opportunity to sit or lie down. Second, a group of executioners in full gear entered there and simply hammered the prisoners with iron pipes, feet, and powerful shockers until they were unconscious. One of my comrades told me that a self-made electric chair was installed in the corner of the basement, not for execution, but precisely for torture with high-voltage current. The occupiers generally feel some morbid passion for the use of electric current. They constantly connected the wires of field telephones to various parts of the guys' bodies. I remember another wild story that my fellow told. When they were led out to wash in the camp bathhouse, the floor there, naturally, was completely flooded with water. And suddenly people started to be severely beaten by current through the water. The guys started screaming, falling. It turned out that the guards, for the sake of entertainment, simply took a bare power cable, plugged it into a socket in the hallway, and threw the end into the water of the shower room where naked Ukrainians were washing. That's how they entertained themselves. They usually threw guys into the basement immediately during the intake of the convoy for prophylaxis, or led them out there for night interrogations, or punished them for the slightest violations of the camp regime. I was indeed incredibly lucky that I didn't end up there.
I understand that the administration used this basement as the main tool of total psychological intimidation. Like, if you stand badly or sing the anthem badly, you'll immediately go to the basement.
Exactly so. Another phrase of the jailer at any dissatisfaction. Hey, scum, do you want to go to the basement? We'll arrange it quickly. And you instantly fell silent and executed everything they ordered.
Horrible. Well, and were there at least minimal rays of light in this total darkness? I mean, some bright, positive human stories that warmed the soul in captivity? Tell us a story about a guy who completely changed his perception of things.
There were 7 of us in the cell. One of the guys' name was Mikhailo. He is already at home, thank God. He was released during one of the exchanges. Over the years of joint imprisonment, we talked a lot with him in a whisper in the evenings when such an opportunity arose. We learned practically everything about each other, every detail of life. Mikhailo frankly told that before the war he led a very wrong, destructive lifestyle, had serious problems with the law and moral mistakes. This is from his own words. But at some point, already at the front, a deep inner turning point occurred in him, and he sincerely turned to God. By his religious views, he was a supporter of Protestantism. And so in these inhuman conditions of the prison, where everyone saw only cabbage swill, Mikhailo made a decision for himself. Every Saturday, he would keep a strict religious fast. While he had at least some physical strength left for this, every Saturday he took his meager camp ration of bread and swill and silently gave everything to us. At the same time, it is important to understand, he was exactly as exhausted and chronically hungry as all of us. He exactly lacked calories. He melted before our eyes. But he calmly said, "Guys, keep it, you need it more." Carefully divided his piece of bread with a thread into 6 absolutely equal parts so that no one would be offended, and gave it away. This struck me so deeply, I just cannot find words to describe my emotional state. I have never encountered such a level of absolute, holy self-sacrifice, either before captivity or after it. It was something incredible.
And the guards, the administration through the intranet cameras, didn't notice such specific behavior of Mikhailo.
No, we invented whole spy schemes to hide this from the cameras. Someone stood with his back, blocking the view, someone simulated cleaning, and we quickly, imperceptibly passed these pieces under the table. Fortunately, the convoy never found out about this. Otherwise, Mikhailo would have been simply beaten for violating the food regime.
This testifies to an incredible iron strength of spirit of the person. Displaying such nobility in a camp is a feat.
Mikhailo was a unique person. Even after he was severely beaten during another interrogation, when he barely crawled into the cell in bruises, all the guys sat terrified because they understood that they would be dragged next. And Mikhailo raised his head, smiled through pain, and calmly said, "Yes, everything is fine, guys, don't worry. Well, I got my blows today, it happens. We are in prison, we are in captivity. God sees everything." He had a colossal, unbroken inner strength. And there was another, slightly different, funny, positive situation. This happened on April 7th, 2025. The thing is that April 6th is my birthday, and the next day, April 7th, our cell was led out to the bathhouse according to the schedule. It was Saturday. And it so incredibly coincided that the very same relatively calm, adequate convoy took over the shift. We washed, we went out into the dressing room to get dressed, and this young guard suddenly looks at me and says, "Oh, Tomas, I was looking for you. Listen, are you smoking?" I was severely frightened by the surprise, drew myself up, and shouted, according to the regulations, "No, boss, thank you very much, but I don't smoke." And he smiled and said, "Come on, relax, don't be afraid, there are no outsiders here." He takes out a pack, hands me a cigarette, himself personally brings a match and lights it. Nearby stood a criminal inmate convict who cut our hair, and they, together with this guard, stood, looked at me, and laughed benevolently. I stand naked, puffing on this strong cigarette. From hunger and nicotine, my head instantly starts to spin wildly. My legs give way, the whole world swims. But I felt such colossal pleasure. The tobacco seemed to me the tastiest in the world. So we stood. They laughed at my appearance. The guard said, "Well, that's all. Come on, puff faster and run to the cell before the orderly sees." This was the only time in all 3 years in Bashkiria that I smoked. And in those terrible conditions, this case seemed to me simply the pinnacle of human happiness and luxury.
Amazing. And why, in your opinion, did this god suddenly manifest such atypical generosity and offer you a cigarette?
I don't even know. Just a human factor. It was a good, calm shift. They had a good mood. Perhaps they wanted to joke purely humanly and see how an exhausted prisoner would fall from one puff of strong tobacco. But everything turned out fine. They laughed, encouraged. Come on, Tom, pull, puff harder, tasty? Like that.
I initially thought that somehow they found out about your birthday and decided to make you a specific prison present in this way.
No, they didn't even suspect my birthday. No one read personal files for the sake of this. Only the guys in the cell knew about the birthdays. When a birthday occurred for one of ours, we tried to secretly do something nice for the birthday boy. Everyone broke off a tiny piece of bread from his tiny daily ration and put it on his plate. Or during lunch, everyone secretly poured a spoonful of soup or poured a little porridge into a comrade's bowl so that the birthday boy had at least one full, normal plate of food on this day. Such presents we made. We tried in every way in these inhuman, beastly conditions to cling to any opportunity to remain human and support each other so as not to go mad.
This commands huge respect. Very cool that despite the wild hunger, you found the strength to share the last. This is a sign of higher civilization.
This was our only psychological weapon. If you break, sink to the level of an animal that lives exclusively by an egoistic instinct of individual survival and steals food from a neighbor, you lose. The system completely destroys you. Only by holding together, sharing the last crumb with our comrades, did we preserve the human essence and find the strength to live on.
Did you rethink your life, your views, after everything you had to go through these 3 years of torture chambers? The human essence and find the strength to live on?
Yes, rethought completely. I clearly saw that before the war, I set completely wrong priorities in life, chased some material, ephemeral things that have no significance. My system of values changed not just a little, but radically, by 100%. And most importantly, I saw with my own eyes how God really works in our life regarding me and other people. The fact that I am sitting here now, in this cozy studio, talking freely with you, drinking water, I consider this exclusively a miracle of direct action. Because purely statistically and logically, I had 1,000 times more opportunities to die during these 3 years than chances to survive. First in a fierce battle in encirclement, then during the first shootings, then from torture and chronic hunger in Bashkiria. A huge number of our guys, unfortunately, never returned from that Bashkir colony. They remained there forever. Therefore, my return is a pure miracle.
Meaning you personally know confirmed cases when our prisoners of war died directly from abuse in Bashkiria?
I personally knew one man of ours. He was a little over 50 years old, of a very strong build, a former athlete. Later, the guys from the neighboring block confirmed to me that he was simply beaten to death during another night interrogation in Bashkiria. The heart couldn't withstand the current load. I also knew one very young fellow. He is originally from Ternopil, younger than me in age. During interrogations, the convoy beat him so severely and systematically on the head that irreversible mental processes began in the guy. He completely lost adequacy, stopped recognizing people, withdrew into himself. He was eventually included in the lists for exchange due to disability. This was about a year ago. He returned to Ukraine, underwent rehabilitation, and what struck me most, as soon as he came to his senses a little, he again volunteered for the military enlistment office, returned to the front line, and, unfortunately, died in battle this year in January. A person went through hell, returned, and gave his life for freedom. This is amazing.
An incredible and very tragic fate. Tell me, did you come to such a deep faith in God directly during your stay in captivity? Or did this process begin before the war or already after release?
I grew up in a traditional, religious Catholic family in western Ukraine. We went to church every Sunday with the whole family from earliest childhood. It was a good, sincere faith. I tried to live according to Christian commandments as much as the modern world allowed. But in captivity, this faith transformed into a completely different quality. This is no longer that traditional faith that your parents automatically passed on to you from childhood because it's accepted in society. This is a deep, conscious, personal faith. When you, from your own experience, being on the verge of life and death under torture, physically feel how God intercedes for you, saves in hopeless situations, and leads you alive out of hell, you begin to see the world completely differently.
Did they give you at least some minimal opportunity to pray in Russia, in this Bashkir prison? Maybe they allowed you to keep a small Bible, a cross around your neck, or a
No,
prayer
what are you
book.
saying? All this was strictly forbidden and confiscated during the very first search. In prison, a cross or a Bible was a reason for an immediate beating. We prayed exclusively together with the guys in the cell, in a whisper, standing in the corner where the internal cameras had a blind spot. We prayed so that the convoy through the intercom wouldn't hear anything. Some of the guys tried to cross themselves before eating, but personally I admit, didn't have such an iron strength of spirit. I was banally very afraid to demonstratively cross myself on camera, so as not to attract the extra aggressive attention of the guards, especially since I cross myself according to the Catholic rite, from left to right, and for Orthodox Russian chauvinists, this would become an additional trigger for accusations of heresy or work for the Vatican.
Meaning, if they saw on camera that you cross yourself not the way they do, this would have immediate, brutal consequences for you?
I'm 100% sure of this. Therefore, I prayed fervently every day about myself, in thoughts, and crossed myself only 2 or 3 times over all the years when I was completely sure that the guards were distracted, and no one saw this for sure.
Horrible. Well, and how do you then, having gone through all this, relate to their pompous state narrative that they broadcast to the whole world about the fact that Russia is allegedly the main cradle of orthodoxy, the defender of true Christianity, traditional family values, and spirituality?
All this is a solid, cheap lie for external use, ordinary, empty words. They have no relation to reality. I don't even know how to explain this adequately to a civilized person. It so historically happened that they proclaimed themselves Orthodox, but at the same time managed to create a hybrid of Orthodox communists, where icons hang next to portraits of Stalin and Lenin, who destroyed the church. Moreover, look at these Bashkir guards. By their culture and roots, they generally never had any relation to Christianity. For the Russian punitive system, orthodoxy is not about faith, not about Christ, and not about the commandments. This is purely a state instrument of geopolitical influence, one and the same ideological weapon like tanks or rockets, and nothing more. It has nothing to do with true faith in God.
And at the conclusion of our conversation, what did you miss most while in this 3 year imprisonment? When you finally crossed the border, found yourself on your native land, and became an absolutely free person, what did you most want to do, eat, or try in the first days?
Well, if we talk globally, then most of all in the world, I of course miss my parents every moment. My sister and my native home. Dreamed of simply hugging them. And if we take purely simple, daily domestic things. Many guys tell that they dreamed of expensive restaurants, steaks, or exotic fruits. And in the last months before the exchange, I formed one obsessive, wild psychological thought. I madly dreamed of being given that very same ordinary millet porridge that they poured on the bottom of our bowl in prison. It, for some reason, seemed the tastiest to me, but given a huge, simply gigantic basin of it. I said to the guys in the cell, I'll come home, cook myself a whole bucket of this millet, and we'll eat for hours so that it simply physically never ends. I also dreamed of buying 3 or 4 loaves of ordinary fresh white bread and just eating it piece by piece without stopping. I wanted ordinary sweet black tea, but very much, a whole 3-liter jug to drink my fill.
Oh gosh. This probably shows how deeply and destructively this chronic, total hunger of the prison breaks the human psyche. Moreover, not only yours, but also of all the released guys. Different guests give different answers. Someone told that on the first night, he drank 1 liter of condensed milk and then had problems with the stomach. Someone else leaned on meat. But practically everyone, after returning in huge volumes, absorbs food because the subconscious is still afraid that right now, everything will be taken away.
Yes, this is pure truth. The body demands carbohydrates. I madly wanted sweets, chocolate, but the basic animal fear of hunger made me want a lot of bread. This is pure psychosomatics of captivity, which passes very slowly.
Good. I am boundlessly grateful to you, Tom. Thank you for finding colossal inner strength in yourself to go through these terrible memories again, recall all this pain, and talk openly with us. For our society and for the whole civilized world, it is extremely important that people see and understand what the modern Russian Federation is, how they behave in closed territories, and whether they have at least some manifestations of declared values and humanity. It is precisely thanks to the living, non fictional stories of eyewitnesses who went through this colossal trial that we try to open the world's eyes to reality. I remind the viewers that our guest today was Tom Dychok, a courageous former serviceman who spent 3 years and 2 months in Russian captivity but preserved human dignity and returned home. Well, and we will see you in the next exclusive episode of the True War Crime podcast. Take care of yourselves and support our project by pressing the like button or texting a comment below this video. See ya!